In this age of gender confusion, it's difficult to find advice you can trust to help protect your child from those who would seek to unduly influence them, setting them up to be manipulated and exploited. On Unmasking the Trans Movement, we discuss, educate, and deliver the info parents want and need to help their children, grandchildren, and even themselves.
Welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement. Now, here's your host, Brad Wilder.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Unmasking the Trans Movement with Jon Uhler. I'm your host, Brad Wilder. Great to have you on board tonight. Lots of things to get to. Our co-host, Dr. Ann Gillies, is taking the weekend off. She's off gallivanting somewhere and having some fun somewhere, I'm sure, on this beautiful Canadian summer night. Want to say hello to Tim and Miranda, who are with us tonight online, as well as Liverbird is here as well. So hello, Liverbird and Tim and Miranda. Good to have you in the chat with us. If you're just joining us, you can get into the chat room and ask Jon your questions tonight. We will definitely look at providing some fantastic answers along the way. We're also going to get into part 4 of, well, a topic that we've been going 3 episodes deep on, and it seems we're going to have to wait even one more episode before we can wrap this up, because we've got to make sure Dr. Ann Gillies is with us for that. It's all coming up right here on Unmasking the Trans Movement right after this.
Citizens and librarians alike have expectations for libraries, and well-run ones can be amazing for everyone. School libraries are often essential to educating children, and as such, special rules apply for the well-being of children in every corner of the world. The World Library Association aims to counter the woke American Library Association's efforts to indoctrinate and sexualize children and hide content from parents and grandparents. The World Library Association provides decades of experience with libraries, and we want to help educate and apply that experience to improve your libraries, whether you're citizens, teachers, librarians, and even trustees. Our common sense model policies comply with community standards, enabling libraries to become truly useful for everyone in the community, and empowering librarians to ensure they work in a safe work environment. The World Library Association. Have questions? We're always open to talk about your libraries, new projects, creative opportunities, and how we can help you. The World Library Association. See us online at worldlibraryassociation.org.
Welcome back. Well, Jon, it's been a long 3-part series, moving into part number 4 tonight, and we'll need a part 5 because, well, we need the Dr. Ann Gillies here next time, right? Don't we?
Absolutely. Brad, thank you as always. I want to thank you and give kudos to you. Everybody needs to know this is a labor of love on our part. Brad, you are a 40-year broadcaster. By the way, I want to recommend Brad's services. If anybody needs a professional commercial done, he does an outstanding job. Brad, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jon.
And Dr. Ann Gillies, right, has taken some much needed time off, but she is an expert as well. She's written multiple books, so we will be having her back. And that's a perfect segue to reference the next series we're going to be doing. We're doing a series on the clinical indicators that are being overlooked by naive clinicians and other mandated reporters, but we could say nefariously suppressed, or how do we want to say it? They're flipping the script. They're rebranding or reframing indicators of sexual abuse as gender-related issues, and so they usher these kids off to medicalization, which is, so the trans movement is simply a moving sidewalk onto a surgeon's gurney. It is the end of it, and this is what everybody needs to know. When you talk about the trans movement, it is the sexual grooming of kids, so setting them up to be preyed upon by financial and sexual predators. And it's going to, if they follow it to the end, there will be guaranteed, this is it, they'll be sterilized and they will have their sex organs amputated. And they'll be a big pharma client for life. And that's why I feel so compelled. Brad, you as well. You're a dad. You're a hockey coach as well. You work with kids all the time. And to think that nefarious individuals that will profit off of our kids and have then sexually deviant motives, all the way to trafficking, by the way, to exploitation, that they're targeting these kids. They've now worked at the highest levels in government to now manipulate things and through public policies and legislation to ensure that it's hands off. Nobody can help protect these kids, meaning nobody can do the normal process of safeguarding.
There's also a lot of Transhausen disease going on there too, John, because you've got all kinds of people buying into this ideology where it's, all roses, sunshine, and rainbows, and it's unicorns and glory days ahead. And you know what? They can make it as gay as they want to. And I say gay as in happy and wonderful and joyous, because I wouldn't want to slight the slang at all, even though or sling the slang.
We're going to hear from a gay person momentarily who's had enough because he watched the Olympics.
Well, I'm straight. I've had enough, and I will not watch the Olympics. The Olympics are definitely done.
Now, right? And so, as a matter of fact, let's start with that, because what we've all seen in front of our faces, and unless you're willfully deaf, dumb, and blind,
you'd have to be.
Well, two things, and it really converges, and we've seen this in the past, we'll show it again, is there is a convergence of very dark satanic stuff. That's where it ends. And we referenced last time with a lot of this trans stuff, you'll see the convergence of the trans and the satanic temple or pentagrams.
They've melded them together. They've merged them in a sense. And because of...
That's right, because under the surface is not just it's not an intellectual thing. Like you're going to ask your kid, hey, you want to be sterilized and get your body parts chopped off? Sign me up. Right? You want to be a big pharma client for life.
So, John, I just want to ask you something. I think this is the important part. There's certain things that happen when an individual, and maybe this is more for a doctor, but I think a psychologist would understand this same place I'm about to try to take this to. When an individual is sexual, their subconscious sort of takes over and takes them into places, almost a dream state, maybe, even a little bit of haze, possibly, all of that. Do you know what I'm talking about? How would you describe that to someone? How would they understand it?
There you go. Sex and sexuality. We are sexual beings, not the way Kinsey referenced it. He was a pedophile.
Right.
He perpetrated horrific things, ultimately to get his. The data was based upon perpetration of kids. He hired pedophiles. So if you can tell me that a young child can orgasm, what have you done to that child? So people need to understand that Kinsey was a perp funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and CIA to dumb down things and to decriminalize. He brought the criminal code down. So, but we are sexual beings. I'm not talking about kids. Kids, once they reach puberty, they'll now have sexual thoughts. But if a kid prior to puberty has a sexual thought, it's been introduced. That's what's so vile about it. Kids cannot handle the impact of sex and sexuality. That has everything to do with who we are, and therefore it reaches into the innermost being, as it were. And when somebody is engaged in the act of sex, and therefore they orgasm, right? It is, as most people know, it's not an intellectual thing. So it opens us up to things as well. But it puts somebody in a state, and that's what you're referencing. And so it's then, and that's why a lot of cults actually, 100%
is that
cult,
adrenaline? Is that adrenochrome? What is it? What are we talking about there? What's going through that brain and that whole process, John? Can you explain any of that?
That's right. You've got endorphins going on, you've got adrenaline going on, and so you are, so to speak, if the two should become one, so to speak, in a marriage, in a healthy marriage. So there is a soul and a spiritual aspect to it. That's why, think about the 60s, when you really wanted to, when the culture in the U.S. was shifted.
Right.
Phrase, sex, drugs, rock and roll. What is it about each of those? They will alter the state.
Yes.
Of somebody's mind.
Yes.
So it's a mind-altering state.
That's right.
And so
that's ultimately what I'm talking about here. Is exactly that.
There you go. So that's why every single cult will center every cult leader. What they're going to do is take cash and take sex.
Okay, so
100%.
that's exactly what's going on with the trans movement. And that's the other part. That's why I'm trying to tie this together, is that state is something that they get the kids hooked on, and they get them obviously self-gratifying first off and foremost, and then it turns into, okay, you have to advance it to another level, which is, again, part of the 9 flags I think that we're talking about here, right? And they take these steps and they get more deviant as they go. So they're not always just jumping into lingerie and calling themselves a girl. It takes a time, and these steps are worked out and manipulated along the way. And they're not just manipulated by the things that they watch or they see, from pornography to commercials to all of the wonderful things that, guys like Bruce Jenner make it seem out to be. I mean, that's not really what's going on, is it?
No, and you hit it right, Brad. You hit on it, and this is our concern. Kids are not going to have sexual thoughts prior to puberty without it being introduced.
So an enabler?
An enabler, but inevitably you're going to have a perpetrator. You're going to have a predator. That's where the other half of my life comes in, where I deal with sex offenders. I've worked with them for 15 years.
Right.
And by the way, you're over the target when those that are dedicated to ensuring that sexually deviant men have direct access to women and children, vulnerable populations, they're going to go after you. They're going to go after us. There's been a tremendous assault, as it were, recently about me, and it's been a pretty challenging thing. And I just want the audience to know I'm about ready to put out a video that will speak to that. So in case people have been wondering, who is Jon? Who is he behind the scenes? I'll be answering that. But why is it that if any of us address this issue, you will see coming out of the woodwork hordes, right? They will descend upon you. Why? Because we're over the target. Why? Because the issue is this. The dirty little secret of the trans movement is this. First of all, we already addressed in previous episodes. I recommend people go back and watch part 1, part 2, part 3.
Right.
We showed how the trans movement is manufactured. It's a lie. It was contrived. It was a scheme. Why? Because prior to the year 2005, it didn't exist. Okay. It got underway and was funded complements of the DSM-5. Without the DSM-5, 13 individuals.
That was a DSM-4 prior to that, right?
There was no problem with the DSM-4. That's why they had to change it. Okay, so the DSM-5, so it comes down to 13 professionals, Ken Zucker, Ken Blanchard. They need to repent, recant, and change the whole thing back to the 2014. They've been silent. They're complicit. They have blood on their hands. If they want to challenge it, come on this program right now or at any point in time, right? Because I'm saying hard words, but it's true. Without those 13 individuals, none of this would happen, because none of it would be profitable. So people need to understand that. This is a lie. Jennifer Billick, she and I couldn't be further from the political spectrum. I don't talk politics. I have my own politics, but I don't want to distract from the issue, because all good people of political spectrum, it doesn't matter, should care about protecting women and children. There comes a point in time where we all lock arms. I'm going to show a video here of a gay guy momentarily. Right? I'm not gay, but guess what? We had gay people on this program. It doesn't matter. I
want to ask you something. Do you think gay people, whether it's lesbian or I guess homosexual men, do you think that they push the trans movement at all? Are they involved in this aspect of it? Is this something that they wanted to happen? Where does this come from? Because I don't think it comes from there, does it?
Well, you know what? Let's have one address that. Brad, you set me up. Okay, so let's hear a video of a man who, my hunch is this. He just saw the opening of the Olympics, which was blasphemous to the Last Supper.
Very
they had a
deviant.
bunch of gay. Plus, they had a figure of Satan on there, and apparently a little child on there. And then you're going to see some dancing that took place afterwards. So let's find out what a gay man.
Jon, what's with the noose and the rope above him there? What's that about?
You know what? I don't think that's I don't know. So we're going to move on. Okay, move on, Brad. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
So here we go.
Okay.
as a gay man, I'm over this fucking gay woke agenda bullshit. Because that's not what the gay community is. Sorry, it is not. What they're pushing on TV is some sadistic shit. And as somebody who has a nephew who's in kindergarten, the last thing I want is for my nephew to think that if he... You already know where I'm going with this, right? That's some bullshit. That, in my opinion, is some bullshit that they're doing with the kids. It has to stop. It has to stop because it's giving gay people a bad name. Gay people who don't want any part in that. I don't even go to gay pride anymore because it's disgusting. Gay pride used to be fun. Gay pride used to be a kiki. We used to that, but basically turned into a fucking sex fest. It's disgusting and it does not represent me in one bit.
This is what took place at the Olympics, by the way. And the reason we're going to play it, there's going to be a little loop here. This was on TikTok or something. I don't know. I don't look at TikTok. I want you to see who's in there. You're going to see two kids down at the bottom and see the guy on the right. We're going to see him momentarily, but it's going to play about 3 times. Scan this so you see who's dancing. Now, this is
adults and little kids.
Okay, this is Desmond, right? Someone said, "Oh, it doesn't really." No, this is where it's going to lead, and this is Desmond, amazing Desmond. This is a kid that's been pushed by his mom, and let's see where this leads. Because now the phrase that people are going to hear, and the reason we're doing this now is we need to be able to see when, unfortunately, we want to stop all this, but if a child has been perped on, you better know the signs. So let's find with Desmond, amazing Desmond, would these men ever have designs for a child to get him or her, a child, into the trans movement for their own purposes? I don't know if I have the volume. What do you think's in the audience? We'll go for a few more moments. They're handing him caps. I'm sorry, Brad. Say it again.
Oh, I didn't say anything.
I want this headline to read.
Let's do the same. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm gonna get. Maybe I didn't. Right. I was trying to tape that on the fly. Obviously.
Oh, that's probably us from talking.
That was us.
Taping.
So,
Yeah.
Right. It's the last minute thing. But what you're going to see, if that video, people can go online, type in YouTube, the Amazing Desmond or Desmond Amazing dancing. What you're going to find it progressively, the men start to hand cash, dollar bills to this kid. Okay, this is the This is why aggressively you're going to see the same people that will defend deviant men gaining access to rape centers, gaining access to the change rooms and locker rooms of gyms like Planet Fitness and We Spa, and into women's prisons. They defend these kind of men, so they are facilitating predators getting access to kids. So this is why, Brad, you, me, and this is why we do this. And then now, to make the segue now to stay on topic, people need to see that this is what they're going to do to kids. Why do you think those men are paying this kid? What do you think the designs they have on these kids? So these kids are going to get perped on. The trans movement facilitates sexual grooming of kids. That's why all the deviant books in schools. And the question is this: once a child is perped on, can we notice so we can help save him, so we can stop the perpetration? So we need to know the warning signs because these kids are being perped on, and can we notice? So that's really, Brad, what we
still have enabler parents that are pushing this as well and backing it. That's where the Munchausen's or Transhausen comes in there as moms agree with it, thinking it's all rosy and wonderful, but it's very, very, very deviant, and people
There you
are,
go. And you know what? Just to do
suffering.
another, another segue. This is sort of last minute, but I'm sorry, I'm not looking at what I'm putting up here. Okay. This is rough. Everybody will have to bear with me because this was very last minute, but I wanted people to see, to connect the dots. Okay. So this is why we need to know the red flags so that if and when, I can't go up any further, sorry. So this guy is one who put together, there was apparently a Bacchalian feast. Okay. This is what people saw. Now, you notice our guy right there? Who's our guy? Oh, dancing in the field. Look at his
nuts are hanging out, John.
Absolutely. Those are his testicles. Now, if you think...
Same thing that needs a good swift kick.
Okay? This was if people can't see what this is, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of very satanic stuff. Okay, but you look, there's that kid. So you think that's by accident.
They've been trying to ban this on YouTube and Facebook all day today.
Okay, there's the same guy that was dancing with the kids. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm on stage, number one, I'm not dressing like that. Number two, you think that somehow I'm not going to know if I fell out? Obviously, he's not wearing underwear. And my contention is this: the same guys that cross-dress to gain access to women and children are not wearing underwear. Or they're wearing women's underwear that they stole. So people need to understand these are not nice guys. I'm going to go to the next one. So here he is, this guy, and I've heard different reasons why a guy, so this is the guy that put all this together, the French guy, right? Jolly. Yeah, I'm sure he is Jolly. Okay, so queer artist Thomas Jolly, you wonder if that cannot be his real name, directed the Paris Olympics opening ceremony. Jolly was behind the idea for recreating, there it is, talk about blasphemy. You notice they didn't do this about Muhammad because the Muslim guys have burned the place down. Okay, yeah. Especially think about how many Muslims are in Paris, by the way. Okay, a Last Supper with drag queens, which featured a near-naked blue Smurf man and a drag queen exposing his testicle next to a young child. The artist-director said he wanted, oh, there it is. There's the inclusivity. Okay, look at his red eyes. By the way, I have heard that there's some activities people can engage in that are heinous that will create that. I deal with adult victims that are SRA survivors, and they talk about they've been raped by people that have red eyes. That's all I'm going to say. Now, if people think that guys dressing up do so because they're artistic, they're wrong. Any guy that's dressing up has been accessing porn, flat out. If he comes out of a gay bar, keep him in a gay club, I don't care. Okay, but the question I have for this picture, and again, we're going to get in the red flags, but people need to understand this is so serious because these guys now are the ones that are saturating and gaining access to kids in the quote-unquote trans movement. Okay, question I have for this picture is where's the body? Look, we got a bunch of stuff in the background. I wonder what that is. Okay, this is the same guy. He's got a penis in his mouth, a pretend penis. Okay, now, Drag Queen Story Hour, the symbol, and we're going to be talking about this in the next series, Brad, about perpetrators and their symbolism. Chicken is code for child. This guy's being interviewed on the news. These were Drag Queen Story Hour readers in a library. And why does he have a chicken? Because it turns out, oh, this guy was a convicted sex offender, a child perp. That's why we have to finally get over this sympathies because they will play upon our sympathies. These guys are not nice. They're predatory. Okay, we're going to move on just for a second. Oh, this is why we're talking about this, because if that guy gets back in office, he's going to keep pushing what? He's going to push all of this, and we're still going to have to be talking about it. And who's the same guy? Rachel Levine is a guy. As a matter of fact, he was behind COVID for in terms of this. Implementing and enforcing the policies in Pennsylvania, and he put sick elderly people back in old folks' home to get everybody sick, but he got his own mother out first. And why should we be concerned? Oh, Sam Britton, who's a sex offender. Oh, he doesn't have the label sex offender. He got off, by the way. The judge was ignorant and let him off. Sam Britton was stealing what? Luggage. Whose luggage? Women's. And he couldn't find he kept the designer luggage. Where was the underwear? I'll tell you where it was. People need to understand because I've worked with sex offenders. He had masturbated in all the underwear. This is a very criminal mind. People need to understand that. Why do I get so agitated? Our kids, I'm going to scroll down one more. I guess that's it. Okay. Our kids are at risk. They are being harmed, and we're handing them over to perpetrators. And that's why the perpetrators smile so much. Look at these guys. They have an unusual smile. Why? Because just like the perp, the heinous sex offender in prison before he was getting out, when he told me about furries, and I didn't know, furries, right? We've done a program on that, big mascot-like costumes. And he says, Miss Euler, you don't know about furries? I said, no. He says, oh, that's one of our favorite ways of gaining access to kids. He said, parents will typically protect their children, except with the trans stuff. He says they'll typically protect their children, like drag queen story, right? But he said, if you dress up and hide yourself, they'll hand their kids to you.
You know what? I'm wondering if the same thing is happening in Disneyland and Disney World, because there's some stuff going on there.
How many arrests have taken place, right, of pedophiles? So, okay,
I saw Minnie Mouse smoking a cigarette with a great big Mexican mustache, and I was just like, what's going on here?
He's a full-blown man in a Minnie Mouse costume. Okay, so hopefully now we're going to transition to the 9. Okay, so
well, wait. How about this? How about we take a quick look? Because we've got Tim and Miranda. They got some questions here, and they're really good ones. So what's influencing the governments around the globe to influence sterilization of so many kids and teens, John?
I'll just give a quick answer, okay? I think you've got multiple, and we've talked about this before. If you want to go and watch some of our videos or one that I put together called Understanding the Trans Movement, there are multiple influences. Okay, so whether or not they all coordinate, but here's some influences off the top of my head. Those that at a very high level want to push or direct society in a certain level. You touch kids' sex and sexuality, you'll create a generation of angry kids that'll burn Seattle and Portland down to the ground. Okay, so you have some people that have that purpose. You have other people that want easy access to kids' sex. So they're going to groom kids. They're going to dumb their intuition down. You cross boundaries enough. Now you've got this entire generation of kids that you can sexualize. You got big pharma. You've got banks. You've got child predators and pushers and Pornhub, which hopefully will be sued out of existence. So you have a number, right? And so these are all, and we've covered this before, Brad, right? Yeah. You have various people, various what I call special dark interests that would have interest in doing this. So surgeons, we think the evil surgeons died off with the Nazis. They're not. Okay, we understand. We've all heard of stories where an adult goes to a surgeon and the surgeon suggests an unnecessary surgery. Why would he do it? It's going to get cash. We don't want to think that doctors, medical professionals are unethical, but guess what? And now there's stories about gynecologists who have been raping kids. Think about Larry Nassar, the doctor for the U.S. Olympic team. What was he doing? He was perping on kids. So you
have some kind of an island just off the East Coast there in New York that's pretty strange too, right?
Okay. So perpetrators play upon that threshold beyond which our mind will not go. Why? It's very disturbing because we can't be Pollyanna any longer. We don't want to believe people do that, but that's all a perpetrator needs. And that's what the whole trans movement is played upon. None of it, once this sinks in, right, Brad, you and I, we've talked to people where all of a sudden it's like, whoa, right. Once you see what this is, you can't unsee it. And now it's like, hold on here. No wonder they're going after parental rights. No wonder they act like cults. No wonder they don't want any therapist talking to their kid, any decent therapist. Why? Because they don't want anybody talking to these kids and causing them to change their minds because they want access to these kids. Did I answer that question?
You did. Okay, so besides money, there's been obviously politicians that first showed public support for this movement. Do you know who the first politician was who showed public support?
I don't. How long has this been in a way perpetrators? But now it's so open. Trudeau, okay, Biden. Why are these guys? They're deviant, number one, but tremendous cash. Why the cash? Big pharma is love and life. These are pharmaceutical patients for life. Where can you ever get a customer for life?
That's right. That's right.
So big money. We've talked about that. Scott Nugent was on our program. How much money, the surgeries, and then afterward. I don't know any other business where you're guaranteed a customer for life and you can ignore your customers. It's unbelievable. Okay. But that's a huge concern for me. But my primary concern also, WPATH has been unmasked. It's a fraudulent organization. GenSpect, I'm here to tell people I have massive concerns about GenSpect. Why? They have Michael Bailey back for a second time. He is horrible. They have James Canner, the greatest threat to getting policies and laws in, meaning he's pushing them for pedophiles. So male sexologists, I've never heard of one that's decent. So I have concerns about all male sexologists. I think they're all deviant. They love Kinsey. So people need to understand that these male sexologists are coming at every angle, and they're using GenSpect, but Stella O'Malley and GenSpect, which is a large organization, they're hosting him, and she wrote a co-paper with him. She was thrilled to, with a guy that used in a live demonstration, we featured it here, called the F saw in his class at Northwestern University, where a man and woman walked in, she disrupts, she lays down, he takes a power tool, plugs it in, puts a dildo on it, and inserts her. That's Michael Bailey. Okay, so, and she's hosting him a second time. As far as I'm concerned, nobody should touch GenSpect with a 10-foot pole. They are grooming kids and allowing the darkest of these males, and it's converging, and Phil Illey. So they are opening the door for the sexual deviants. But they're against medicalization. So it's really a twofold message to properly protect kids. It's not, we are here to say, do not medicalize kids, but that's not enough. Because if you stop medicalization, you're still going to groom these kids through the sexual deviant books and everything we're talking about. So the goal is we need to keep kids and women and kids, women and children, minors. We need to keep them safe. So it's a twofold battle. Stop medicalizing kids, because that's a superficial treatment. It's only going to add insult to injury. That does nothing to reach what we're going to talk about is the inside angst of a child. Get them help and protect them from perpetrators. So we need to know if a child is being harmed as mandated reporters, especially those of us in the mental health, medical, or educational field, all sorts of fields, by the way.
So where do we go from here, John?
Hey, people can probably tell we're pretty passionate. Maybe I'm the equivalent of you, Brad. You're a hockey coach. Here, I'm going to give myself a heart attack. Okay, moving along. Folks, thank you for being with us. That was a very long, so we may do 6 parts because I used up all our time here. Okay, we're now talking about, we went through the behavioral indicators. I want people to go back and watch that, because what will you first notice? We looked at the behavioral indicators. Now, clinical simply means under the surface in a way. That's how I'm going to put it, meaning a professional. So you need to know the warning signs if your child is becoming troubled. We talked about school behaviors. We talked about eating disorders. We talked about changes in school performance. We talked a lot about that, okay? So if you see that, you're going to need to get help for your child if it's getting really profound, especially if that's all coordinated with or coincides with, I don't want to be a girl, I want to be a boy, or vice versa, okay? Those are all red flags indicating there's something going on under the surface. So we as mental health professionals, plus this is where we're going to get into mandated reporters, by the way. Okay, so mandated reporters are trained, and they're not trained as clinicians, but they should spot the red flags. So we're finally going to get into it, Brad. So here's number 1 that is reframed. You're going to see a lot of the same thing, behavioral, but we're going to go under the surface now. What drives this? So self-injurious behaviors are always, I can't think of an exception, quite frankly. So we'll say this. I'll say this. 99.9% of the time, self-injury, I'm talking significant self-injury. Okay, we're not talking superficial, taking a little paper clip and lightly scratching the surface. That's not self-injury. Where it draws significant blood, where it needs stitches, where you have right? You have to put Band-Aid. And one of the other things you're going to see, the behavioral indicator, these people will wear long sleeves. Look at the girl up top. And one thing you'll see is they will wear long sleeves even on hot days. There's going to be a couple areas where kids will self-injure on the arms, on the abdomen, and between the legs. Okay, those are very common. So it indicates a need. This is what self-injury is. It's anger. Anxiety is really the adrenaline, by the way. Flip side of her is anger. Anger puts you in the fight-flight state. Okay, so people need to really understand the way to best understand anxiety is it's adrenaline. Okay, you take the checklist for anxiety, checklist for adrenaline. If you drink a bunch of Starbucks all at once, you're going to meet all the criteria of anxiety disorder. Okay, so what it is ultimately is anger. So when somebody is cutting on themselves in such a way that any typical or average person looks at this and your eyes go up and say, oh my gosh, that's self-injury. On the bottom left picture, that is cigarette burns. Okay, so burning or cutting are two of the most, also sometimes hair pulling. Why? Because they've got, if you have tension, we call it stress, but if you have tension, it's going to be localized in one of three places. And anger creates tension because you have adrenaline. Okay, so if you're angry, I'll tell you, you're going to feel it in three places: your jaws, your hands, and your shoulders, trapezius muscles. Okay, so as they're cutting, here it is, they're not feeling it, and so that's number two. You know the difference between someone that is just superficial, either attention seeking or all that. I used to work with kids in the system. The reason why somebody can cut like this potentially is life-threatening, is because as they're cutting, they're not feeling it. They'll feel it later. Well, how can you do this and not feel it? Because you're not there at the moment. You're detached from your body. How many times have we heard young people say, I don't connect with girls. I don't connect with my breasts. I don't feel like these are mine. I'm telling you, they're in a dissociative state. There's a part of them that feels like a male or doesn't identify. So shame on every single surgeon that's taken advantage of these kids. And we've looked at many photographs of kids that have self-harm scars. And so they're taking advantage of seriously wounded kids, and inevitably 99% of the time, I would say 100% of the time, but 99% of the time, these kids have been perped on in a significant way, which matches, think about the kind of pain and anger that these kids are dissociated from their anger. It's all coming out in driving that blade or the fire, okay, as far as the burning. So people need to understand that's how much pain, but it's really anger. They're dissociated from that. But this is how much pain they're in. So when they're doing it, they don't feel it. And it may indicate that a self-injurious part has engaged within her what's called DID, dissociative identity disorder. We'll call that PARTS, IFS, internal family systems. Therapy is a good therapy that is trauma therapy. So this is the sign of trauma. Brad, are there any questions?
I'll
slow down.
This is mental health, obviously. This is
correct. So that's where the term clinical. So now we're looking at 9 clinical indicators that any clinician or medical professional should know. And that's why I have no tolerance for Dr. Gallagher, the Nazi doctor that's slicing off breasts, yeet the teats. As a matter of fact, anytime she wants to come on and debate me, I'd love to do that. I hope she gets her rear end sued. She bought yachts. She bought a yacht by cash, lives in a really luxury apartment that overlooks Miami Harbor, off the skin of these kids. It's Nazi-like.
Yeah, sad.
It's
sad.
Unbelievable. Okay, I'll
disgusting
let
lady, a disgusting lady, and a disgusting surgeon.
Okay, this is on Gallagher's website. Look at that name right behind it. Oh, they're celebrating Christmas. Look at the self-scarring.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-harm there, eh?
Right? Which scars were there first? And you mean to tell me that doctor didn't do a physical exam, didn't see these scars? Oh, she saw them, and what happened? She didn't care. So this girl, you probably, quite frankly, clinically...
But, John, before they get to Dr. Gallagher, they've obviously gone through another part of the system, which again pushes them to Dr. Gallagher. So let's not be pushing it all onto Dr. Gallagher, because it's gone three steps. It could have gone from the person to the school, from the school teacher to the school counselor to the counselor to the school board. The school board gets him into the psychologist then turns him over to Dr. Gallagher. There's a lot of hands involved here, isn't there?
That's right. And every one of them are mandated reporters. And that's why we're doing this, Brad, because it is inexcusable. Oh, there we go. Okay, number 2. Maybe that's what, I did bring this up. There's the example. So, but the last step, so how dare any doctor do surgery on this kid? Okay, so that's why people need to understand. But mandated reporters have no excuse and need to be sued to the hilt. They need to be criminally charged, in my estimation, okay? And if they don't know any better, then why are they in their position? They're brain dead because every other year, every biannually, they have to do sex abuse awareness training in order to get recertified and relicensed. Okay, so professionals should know this. And if any professional wants to come on and debate me, do it now. Come on, anytime, right? Brad, we'll have them on.
Absolutely. No problem there.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, to any parent, I would recommend this. If you're going to take your child to a mental health professional, you ask them, can you tell me the 9 red flag clinical indicators of sexual abuse? If they look at you like, what are you talking about? They should be able to rattle them off the top of their head. Okay, I came up with this list in about 4 minutes. Now, I added pictures. Okay, so this is just basic in my estimation. As a matter of fact, this is basic. If a clinician can't rattle this off, if a doctor can't rattle this off, don't have them work with your kid. Why? They're probably going to reframe everything in terms of gender. They're going to send them off to a gender clinic. And in California, what's going to happen, right? They're not going to tell the parents. And so number 2. So we have self-injury. Brad, before we do number 2, any comments?
No, everybody's right on track and following along perfectly tonight. Keep on going, John.
There we go. Okay, so we've got self-injurious behavior and eating disorders. Again, behavioral and clinical, sometimes it is what it is, but now we're going to look under the surface. The issue of eating disorders comes down to both pain, emotional pain and control. And especially for bulimia, somebody that's very, very overweight, especially a woman, oftentimes, not all the time, because this is important. And there can be other reasons for being overweight, endocrine issues, all that, because if you have a thyroid issue, you'll gain weight. But in terms of the binging, or let's say somebody, now, I don't picture somebody super overweight, but oftentimes a survivor will end up becoming overweight or obese. Why? To not be attractive. Why? They don't want the attention. Why? Because men did what to them? Okay, so anorexia, and you can look at family dynamics. And again, it's not always sexual abuse, but oftentimes, so you'd better ask, you'd better be mindful. And again, so what we want to do, but look at how life-threatening anorexia can be. Karen Carpenter of the Carpenters were big in the 70s. She died of anorexia. So we can see what's happening to the woman in the top right. Bulimia is binging and purging. Okay, and then you have somebody over here that's emotional eating. Emotional eating is always emotion. We call it comfort food. Okay, what the food's not supposed to be for comfort; it's supposed to be for nutrition. Okay, so now again, I'm not gonna, and that's important to know. Not every single one of these is going to say, "Oh my gosh, the kid's being perped on." No, but the more of these you see, so let's say a kid has an eating disorder and self-injurious behavior. Okay, now we've got a compounding a series of indicators, but I like that bottom middle one. Okay, so look at the binging and purging. Redemption is a sense of release, I would say this, but control, anxiety, guilt, numbness, there. What is numbness? By degree, it's dissociation. Okay, then they go on diet, hunger, eat, binge, purge. So that's a cycle. It's horrific. That's why a lot of colleges, by the way, are very mindful of eating disorders. They need to be. Okay, we're moving on. So that's number 2. So we have self-injurious behaviors, eating disorder. Every clinician should be able to already tell me what are the 9. Okay, so number 3, depression. Okay, so we'll just go through the list real fast. Lasting feelings of sadness, withdrawn, Agitation. This is important because kids don't know how to do adult depression well. What does that mean? It's very interesting. We who become depressed stay in bed. Kids aren't as sophisticated. They're much more in touch with their emotions. So we call it agitated depression. So it's kind of interesting. So if you have an agitated kid, it's important to understand that all things being equal, they may very well be depressed, right? We think of depression as low energy. So with kids, depression comes out oftentimes as agitated depression. Problems concentrating, changes in sleeping and eating. Okay, there's the eating issue. Shifts in mood. Now, by the way, if somebody has been sexually abused and they have PARTS, dissociative identity disorder, I work very well with that, or PARTS, sometimes and oftentimes actually the shifting in mood. Now, this could be hormones, but think about also when the kids are put on these hormones. The one thing I hear time and time again from the detransitioners when they put their videos out is what happened to them when they started to take male hormones. They got highly sexual and agitated, right? That's a male issue. Okay, but shifts in mood, that can be hormones, it can be mood stuff, but it also can be parts coming out, shifting real fast. But either way, shifts in mood. Loss of interest in activities, isolation, school problems. We covered a lot of this. Significant change in peer group, substance use, and preoccupation. Here, this is super important with dark things. And hence, the Church of Satan has come along. So you can see this convergence. So you'll oftentimes see these kids with pentagrams that listen to their music. They look at the album covers, look at the deviant art. You will start to see if your kid starts to go dark, they wear goth. We have a problem, okay? Because kids will wear their emotions on their sleeves and on their outfits. So, Brad, are there any questions?
No questions. Well, maybe. Hold on. Let me look at this one. I have a question for John. Can trauma lead to a condition called ARFID, known as avoidant restrictive food intake disorder? Mr. Alex wants to know.
Yes, I would say that's a reframing, maybe a reframing of an eating disorder. Part of what we do in mental health or the DSM is we earn our existence by coming up with new terms. Right? There's a new term for this, new term for this. So think about that. Could you read that again, Brett?
Sure.
Give me the
basically
new term.
Says ARFID, which is the short version, but avoidant restrictive food intake disorders.
And somebody might say, John, I thought you have the DSM-5. Sorry, I'll go back and I'll look at it. I've got it right here. Okay, so avoidant restrictive. So that's another word for
avoidant. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm restricting. Well, what does anorexia do? So you've got one of two options with food, right? So food should never be an emotional thing. If food became an emotional thing, at the very least, something was going on in the family. Because for food to become an emotional thing, somebody has to make it emotional and have to make an issue. Well, poor girls growing up this day and age, they're bombarded with what? All these skinny models. So now they suddenly have an issue where there wasn't. So even normal kids can have issues. But or maybe somebody made an issue at the dinner table. Now we have issues. But you compound that with trauma, and now food is going to take on an additional thing. So it's either control, nobody can make me eat. And I hate to say it, here's a part of anorexia. People are not going to want to hear it, but you need to understand because this has to do with sexual abuse. If you orally rape someone, if you force oral sex on a kid, and adults doing that, guess what they might be inclined to do once that starts to try to work itself out? You're going to clench your teeth and you're not going to let anything in your mouth. That's why this is so serious. Or you're also going to vomit. And sexual abuse survivors oftentimes have taste in their mouth. What do you think they're tasting, including blood, by the way? This is really serious. So we have to be able to be smart enough in order to protect kids to be able to see that it's not just the thing, but it represents something. So yes, so avoiding, so anytime we see with food, going one direction or the other, there's usually an indication. So binging, I'll tell you another thing, right? If you've had somebody force stuff in your mouth, what might you do? You're going to shove stuff in your mouth to stop the taste, to stop the, right? And now you're eating out of anger. So you're going to tend to see somebody, any changes in the extreme with food. Maybe that's the best way to view it. Okay. Now, does any one of these significantly and definitively mean that there's been sexual abuse? No, but I need to be mindful that, hey, wonder what's going on for that kid. So somebody that's super overweight, somebody that's binging and purging, or somebody that 100% restricts, we have to be mindful. So that was an excellent question. So again, whatever term they're coming up with next to describe these, and I use the term emotional eating. That's not as severe, but it can be, right? That's the person just, you watch when they're agitated, where they're happy, any kind of mood shifting, we got food going on. Normal people understand that as well, because if they go to the movies, guess where they go as they step in the movie theater, by the way? Where do people go? They go to the concession stand. Why? Well, you have to have popcorn and stuff to go to the movies. I can't go to the movie and not eat. Okay, so that's a mild thing. We all understand that, right? And that's why at parties we have food. But if there's been trauma, food just doesn't become food anymore.
I thought it was just to kind of get rid of the hangover the next day.
Okay, could be. Moving along. Number 4, anxiety. Okay, behaviors. Here's indicators, right? Irritability, being on edge, restlessness, nervousness, avoiding new or difficult situations, withdrawing, and hypervigilance. That's why you're oftentimes, by the way, because some of these can be signs of depression as well. Okay, and by the way, usually you're going to have anxiety before depression. Why? Anxiety is the surface, it's adrenaline. Flip side of hurt is anger. So if somebody's been hurt, adrenaline's pumping into the body, you had your boundaries crossed or you've been abused, you will feel anxious, but it's really adrenaline. That's the best way for people to reframe this. If you can't do anything with it, then ultimately, what do you do with your anger? Because we're disconnected. As a matter of fact, every perpetrator, manipulator, cult leader, all these guys have to disconnect kids from their intuition so they can't have boundaries, and they will disconnect them from their anger.
John, what kind of pharmaceutical sets those kids back into a good level of anxiety with less of all of that? What is there a pharmaceutical that does that and accomplishes that task?
There's a number of them. The challenge, though, is, do you want to numb a kid out? Do you want them not to feel anything? If a kid needs medication or anybody, then get the medication. I would defer to a medical doctor for that. Excellent question.
So I would like to think that you could just kind of maybe get them involved in extracurricular activities, such as sporting events that maybe tire them out a bit more, get them that adrenaline going, get it out of them. There's other ways. There's competitive ways. It doesn't all have to be driven by devices and sexual needs. It can be obvious, or even pharmaceuticals. It should be able to be, I guess, brought out through physical activity as well, just to, I guess, induce that tiredness.
Yes, unless it's abuse. Okay, unless it's abuse, the woundedness the offense has to come up. The kid has to be able to talk about it so he can. I use the idea of knapsacks. We're supposed to have one knapsack, no more, no less. That has to do with our stuff, our responsibility. If somebody places somebody else's responsibility on somebody else, including a kid, the responsibility to treat somebody properly, that means the responsibility was transferred onto that kid. That's why the kid has shame, which is false guilt. So the goal is to get the false guilt, to place responsibility back where it belongs. The energy, the mechanism by which that's going to be done is the anger. So the one thing an abuse victim never has initially is they don't have a connection to their anger. And so you need to be able to have a child not just involved in sports, but to be able to get the anger out that is very focused and connected to the offense. So the flip side of hurt, that's negatively impacting, that's self-injurious. Now now it's hurtful.
So there's still some mental assistance that's needed along the way. The sports could also do that, but you need both of them. They need to tie together if your child's in that situation,
That's right. Because you have to get the child. Think about what we're even talking about, the withdrawal. So as you're getting your child help, get them back involved in positive peer groups. So right here, we see under number 1, withdrawing. Okay, so as you're getting your child help, what I recommend to everybody is this. If you've been sexually abused, you have a kid, you're going to need to let the kid vent. I recommend now, I'm really recommending this, the martial arts torso that you can kick and punch has about a 300-pound base. You fill it with water or sand. That and a baseball bat.
Yeah, the Bass Rootin' dummy. It's great.
All right.
Yeah.
You have to get it out. Okay. And a wooden baseball bat, by the way, it's called venting. Okay. If you can't have one of those, take a towel, kind of like a beach towel, wrap it up with duct tape and hit your bed. You got to get it out. And while that's happening, that'll be part of the healing process. Truth is coming out. It'll be clear. It'll clarify who's responsible for what. And then part of the therapy is get the kid involved in healthy activities.
Victoria joined us on the chat room just a second ago. She says, repent, you got to get right with Jesus Christ.
Well, okay, I would say yes. So number one, all of us, okay? But when it also has to do with survivors, okay? So number one, we all need a relationship with God. Now the question is, have we been wounded on top of it? Okay, half the book of Psalms, 46% of the book of Psalms, 3,000-year-old book. Everybody's familiar with the book of Psalms, right in the middle of the Bible. Largest book, 150 chapters. Half of that, 46%, are imprecatory prayers. It's, Lord, get them for what they've done to me. God understands. He will take care. He honors our rage. So if somebody wants to know about that, go to Journey to Healing. Survivorsupport.net. That's my other site, right? Survivorsupport.net. Under the podcast tab, and you'll see my series on forgiveness, what it is versus what it is not. So whether Christian or not, as a matter of fact, the place you'll find the most survivors that are not getting help are in churches. Okay, because they say, just forgive. That's not the process. There's a process. So, okay, forgiveness. Go listen to the series. Okay, so yes, I'm a Christian. I'm tracking with you, but God helps those that are helpless. He helps the wounded. That's where his heart is for. The poor. It's not financial poor. Okay, part of it. Okay, so yes, I would say absolutely amen, but we're talking about woundedness.
Well, as we get closer to wrapping up our 1-hour episode here tonight,
we didn't know. That's right. Part 5 coming up next week, Brad.
We've managed to get through at least 4 out of the 9. There's still 5 more points to go, and they are going to get more deviant as we move our way along here. And you're going to find out that
more hard, significant. Absolutely. Okay.
Dr. Ann, I guess, will be back next week, and she'll have something to add. I know you guys have been focusing a little bit on her books. Maybe you want to tie in what her next book is that we can discuss on next week's show as well.
That's right. She's got a number of books about the trans movement. And when we're finished with this, she wrote a book about perpetrators. As a matter of fact, let me find it. I'll share the screen again. We're going to go back here. And, I've got a copy right here. Do I? Sorry. She was very cute. I would recommend people go online. She gave me a signed copy. So it's a very heartening thing. Let's see. I know I have her books here somewhere, but we're going to look at. There we go. Okay, damaged by the predators among us. So when we're finished with this multiple part series on the indicators of sexual abuse that are being reframed, the 9 red flag key clinical indicators. Okay, so everybody will know what to look for to help a kid. We're then going to look at those that harm kids, because Anne is living in the aftermath of having been married to a perpetrator. These perpetrators are so sneaky and adept. So whether in churches, in the trans movement, or in our homes, somebody that we know. So I recommend get this book. As a matter of fact, I thank Anne. She asked if I could write I have a little chapter in here with some of my charts. So this will really be a good primer on how predators gain access. So that'll be the next series. We're going to look at the wiles of predators, the tactics, the mindset. We'll go into some aspects of psychopathy. So what do they look like? And we'll cover the red flags of perpetrators. So we're looking at the red flags of perpetration. We will look at the red flags of perpetrators.
All right. Thank you, John. I want to thank Tim and Miranda for being on our chat tonight, as well as Liverbird. Mr. Alex was commenting and asking some questions, as well as Victoria, who chimed in. Tim and Miranda, thank you for spreading this awareness and for taking the time out of your lives to help those kids and victims who feel forgotten and unheard. You're very welcome. That's why we're here, and that's exactly what we try to do every single Sunday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Time right here on Unmasking the Trans Movement. On behalf of Jon Uhler and Dr. Ann Gillies, who's off this week, I'm Brad Wilder. Thanks for being here, everybody. Take care. Till next week. Remember, it's not our fight, or not our kids' fight. It's our fight. We'll see you soon.